For my topic, I decided to look at Theodore Bozeman's Federal Theology and National Covenant. Bozeman's article critiques Perry Miller's book, The New England Mind, in which he argued that the early Puritans held to two covenants, one known as the Covenant of Grace, alongside a separate national covenant. It is Bozeman's thesis that the early Puritans did not see these as two separate covenants, but as one and the same covenant extended to all, regardless of personal election. In Bozeman's words, the covenant was not two but one, at once individual and corporate, thus resisting inclusion in Miller's two-covenant pattern. According to Bozeman, in early Puritan thought, there was a blurring of the lines between the individual and the nation to which the individual belonged. According to Miller, the covenant of grace referred to individuals and personal salvation in the life to come, whereas the national covenant applied to nations and governed their temporal success in this world. In Miller's Deuteronomic view of God's dealing with the nations, Puritans saw England and later the Massachusetts colony as a new Israel and directly applied the blessings and curses from the Old Testament based on the nation's obedience to God's laws. According to Bozeman, the early Puritans saw obedience to Christ as compulsory for all Christians. This, however, was not considered by them to be a covenant of works, arguing that while there were no works involved as an antecedent to salvation, yet the covenant offered graciously by God, once accepted, bound the believers to obedience to fulfill their end of the contractual agreement. For the Puritans, Christ not only covers the sins of his people, but also cures their sins. Bozeman argues that the Puritans saw the whole nation included in the visible church, regardless of whether they were wheat or tares, elect or unredeemed, and that all members of the national church were bound to obey God's laws. Pulling from Puritan expositors such as Thomas Cartwright and John Newstubb, Bozeman argues that the individual is simultaneously a personal beneficiary of the divine redemption and a being tightly enmeshed in the national collectivity that was at once England, Israel, and the church. As Bozeman says, when Cartwright invoked the contract between God and the sinner, he certainly was thinking of individuals and their personal salvation, but he hardly intended a purely individual transaction severed from the collective. The early Puritan writers believed that God had given himself not exclusively to the elect, but to all of England. This is borne out by statements such as, "This little island is a garden of the Lord, the apple of God's eye," and that as an Englishman, we are his people, adopted, assured in a new covenant, sealed in the blood and obedience of Jesus Christ.